we're so honored to have you here. You'll talk a little bit about breaking down stigma for people living with diabetes, how to raise your voice, and how, I think one of the writers said it really well, I know how to manage my condition, but sometimes things just happen that I can't control. And I can't even imagine what that's like during pro cycling. So please, Phil, you're going to tell us a little bit about more about what we just saw, because the summit isn't the only reason why you're here today. So we're very excited to hear that.
Thank you so much.
Kick it off.
Hello, hello. It's good to see everyone. How are we doing? So let's talk about diabetes, about advocacy, about making an impact, driving change for our people, right? The diabetes family is a very special one. And in this day and age, it's a very strong one. Why? It's because of people like you who are trying to make our lives better. And for that, I say thank you. This year, in September, I'll celebrate 40 years of living with diabetes. So I want to talk a little about managing the condition. Right? I've got a little bit of experience. You know, when I was diagnosed with type 1 in 1982, the doctors told my mom, your son's going to be dead or blind by 25. Here's your insulin. Good luck. Then my mom had to not only figure out how to manage my diabetes, checking glucose, insulin for an infant, when the only way to check your glucose at the time was squeezing urine out of my diaper onto a test strip to find out where glucose was 2 hours in the past. And then blood glucose meters came. They could play with me. I was a little pin cushion, an experiment that was constantly going on. Check, when does food work? When does insulin work? What do we have to do to keep our son alive? I've had 4 children now, and I can't imagine just the despair that was going through her mind and the mental stress around this. One person is not diagnosed with diabetes. A family is diagnosed with diabetes. And helping families to have hope and realize what's possible, I think, is the most important thing. Because there's things that you can control. And if you can't control them, what you can do is control your attitude. And controlling an attitude around diabetes means we have to have more positivity. There's a lot of negativity on the internet. There's 100 years of thinking that diabetes is a killer, that you can't eat this, you're going to go blind, you're going to lose your legs, you can't play sport, and we have to change that, and it's up to all of us to do so. When I finally took control of my own daily management of the disease was at 6, when my mom said, I refused a shot. My mom said, that's fine, you'll go blind. I said, excuse me? She goes, don't do your shot, don't take care of yourself, you're going to go blind. Go ahead. I said, can I have my shot? She goes, no, you're not grateful. You don't want to use the tools. Go ahead. Live a careless life. You're going to be blind by the time you go to college. So I begged her for my insulin. I went to see my I did the shot. And I said, okay, if I'm going to prevent blindness, then I'm going to do it. I went to my doctor and I said, A1C. My A1C was 8.2%. I said, will I go blind from this? And Dr. Deeb said, maybe. I can't say yes, I can't say no. I said, what do I have to do? And he said, lower it. Try to get below 7. And what I found was one of the most powerful tools in that journey to get A1C below 7 was exercise. In the late 80s, diabetics were not supposed to compete in sport. My doctors could not tell my mother how to manage insulin, how to manage food for sport. So what we had to figure it out. And that just came from trial and error. In the first week of swim practice, I learned 3 very important lessons. 1, if I had good control of glucose, I could win. 2, if I had bad control of glucose, I would lose. And 3, on the days that I was in the pool, my glucose was much easier to manage. I could eat the foods that I wanted. The insulin worked faster. Exercise was my really motivation. Like exercise and not going blind were my motivations to control diabetes as a kid. The insulins at that time were different, right? I was on human insulin, and it worked. I say today that human insulin does keep us alive, but it would be like running a Fortune 500 company on pagers and fax machines. You can do it, but it's far from optimal. We had 2 blood glucose meters that took 2 minutes to work, to blood glucose meters that took 1 minute to work, to 30 seconds, and that journey of you never know how many things you can accomplish while you're waiting for your blood glucose number to read, the machine to work. And so it's just been this, I really think, this interesting journey in the diabetes treatment, the technology. This is not a Fitbit. I've got glucose on my wrist right here. Think about that. I check my glucose probably 150 times a day. Just quick, it's okay. Katja, thank you for leaving the OJ just in case. And so what I realized as a kid, the first 18 years of my life were spent in fear of going blind from diabetes. I worked really hard. I got my A1C into the high fives, low sixes. But what happened with that? Severe hypoglycemia. It was great to have a great A1C and prevent blindness, but I was most likely going to die from hypoglycemia in the night. Many seizures. This was a frequent part of life for me as a young kid. And then guess what? Continuous glucose monitors come out. In 20 days of having a CGM, I learned more about what everything did to my body than in 23 years of obsessing about glucose control. And then you can see the great things that insulin was doing for me, but also the dangers it was presenting. And with that data, you could make change. And so then with CGM came around, and then some further improvements in insulin treatments that became available, it was not, afraid of dying anymore. First 18 years, afraid of blindness. The next 10 years, afraid of death in the night. And you know what I'm afraid of now? I'm afraid of that we don't make a big enough impact for enough people so they can have the same opportunities we do. You see those athletes on Team Novo, right? They're kids who are diagnosed, kids who are scared to death that their dreams were dead because of diabetes, because that was the knowledge that was out there. When we first launched that team, 12 of the 18 riders in 2013, when they were diagnosed, were told, you will never race a bike again. Imagine that. Everyone remembers their day of diagnosis. And for so many of them, it was the worst day in their lives because they thought their dream was finished. To now. And again, it's because of advocacy, because of making noise. And I've had the privilege of the chosen platform of sport to make that noise. We've used the bike. I love the bike. I love to ride my bike. And I love the power sport has to change the world. And so through the noise that we've made in the cycling community, we now have kids who are diagnosed with diabetes, and it's actually the best day of their lives because they see they have diabetes, and there's an all-diabetic pro cycling team, and they realize that's a family that they can come be a part of. And by the time they've left the hospital, they've already applied to our talent ID camps, which is the baseline. That's where we recruit kids at 15 years old, bring them in, train them, show them that they can be role models, teach them how to be bike racers, teach them how to use the tools available to manage their diabetes. When we had our first talent ID camp in 2013, one child had a CGM. Fast forward to 2018, we had 26 of the 50 kids had CGMs. This camp, the final summer, last summer in France, when we again had an in-person camp with all these young, soon-to-be superstars in the world of cycling, every single one of them had a continuous glucose monitor. And that's why we're here, to raise voice. Because a person with diabetes diagnosed that has the old school stuff, blood glucose monitoring, insulin, yes, they can live, but they're not going to thrive, right? So we have to fight. We have to unite. And you talk about raising voice, about advocating. You don't know whose life you're going to change. If you change one life, if you make a difference in one person's world, is that person then going to want to pay that forward? The more we help, the more we help people to feel that diabetes is their superpower, the more impact we're going to make. The governments of the world who think, look at us, people with diabetes, as an expense, right? That's the wrong way of thinking. We have to educate them. Investing in the best-in-class insulins, the best-in-class treatments, the best-in-class technologies for people with diabetes, it's not a cost. It's an investment in creating a healthier community. It's an investment in making change in your society. Because people with diabetes, we're the ones that have the data around the glucose problem, but everyone's got a glucose problem. There's type 2 diabetes is not, you wake up and you have it. There's a journey to get there, and that's a journey that we can reverse as we help people to realize that, be active. Let's have everyone thinking about life, have everyone thinking about health, and help the people without diabetes realize they're a lot more like us than they think. I look at a lot of data now on a daily basis of people without diabetes competing in sport and their continuous glucose monitors. I don't know if you know this, but there's people, non-diabetics, who can maintain a glucose of 200 milligrams per deciliter for hours at a time and competing in marathons, Ironmans. The drops in glucose that we have during exercise, everyone's a diabetic. So the more we get people to exercise, the more activity we do, the better the world's going to be. I think health is wealth, and through activity and through fighting, raising our voices to the loudest levels possible, we can ensure the best-in-class tools are available for all, right? And then you look at the advocacy. We've made tremendous strides in Europe. Like, if I was a type 1 diabetic, I would much rather be here in the EU than in the US. It's because it's very much the insurance companies look at us as a cost and nothing more. And what you're doing here is a phenomenal opportunity to build the community. My chosen sport was cycling, but how do you want to raise your voice? Think about how you can bring people together, get them to talk, because one person with diabetes is one person with diabetes. Two people with diabetes, that's a family.